1.5 miles below the surface of the South Pacific Ocean. 1.5 miles under the water, away from the daylight and the air that's so precious to all of us. That is the position of the stolen Euclidean submarine, in which Mrs. Gregory, Captain Tex Bradford, Jerry Hall, and Joan Gregory are trying to escape from the Magic Island. It would seem that they've done a fair job of escaping, as they're now 500 miles from the strange island. But things are not going along any too well, and Captain Bradford, left in control of the submarine, while Jerry and Joan are resting in the stern section, is admitting to Mrs. Gregory that he doesn't feel very happy about the situation.
I know you have complete confidence in Joan's knowledge of these Euclidean machines, but is it safe to stand still right here?
I think it's a lot safer to stand still than to run a machine I don't know much about, into something I know nothing about.
Well, are we securely anchored?
We are, but it wouldn't matter if we weren't. Have you any idea, Pat, what the pressure is under 9,000 feet of water?
Why, I know it must be enormous, but
You bet it's enormous, and we won't do any drifting, except as some current might move us a little. And Joan reminded us that currents are scarce along here, so we're safe.
9,000 feet below the surface of the sea, and safe?
Joan says so, and she knows.
I wonder.
Wonder?
Yes, wonder if we're not putting too much confidence in all of these Euclidean inventions.
Well, so far they've done everything that was claimed for them. They're perfect as far as I can see.
Is anything made by man ever really perfect?
No, of course not. But we've seen enough of these things to know that we're better off with them than we would be without them.
When we're in such a position as this, yes. And what worries me most is that we're always in such a position. That's what makes Euclidia so terrifying and fascinating. It would be almost worth going over to their way of thinking to assure your safety.
Now, Pat, you're incurably romantic. And you're looking at all this as something very wonderful. I warned you when we started on this cruise that there wasn't any such thing as magic. But every time Jerry called that weird colony a magic island, you took it for granted. These scientists aren't magicians, Pat. And they aren't friendly or warm or reasonable. They're hard and bitter and clever and cruel.
How do we know that they are?
What?
How do we know that they're all those things?
They've kept us pretty tightly imprisoned for some time, haven't they?
Have they ever harmed us, though?
Those ray guns?
Oh, those ray guns have done nothing more to any of us than just to put us to sleep.
Even so, I'd just as soon pick out my own times to take a nap.
Oh, of course, Tex. It's a little surprising to drop off to sleep suddenly when someone else wants you to. But what I'm getting at is something larger than that. The real reason behind all the activities of G47 and his scientists.
That's easy enough. They're building up the greatest collection of mechanical and electrical devices the world has ever known. And when they complete their work, they'll simply take the world over.
But might the world not be better off?
Better off?
Yes. If all the nations were controlled equally, it might be a means to prevent war.
Yes, it might. But I'll bet G47 hasn't any such beautiful ideas.
Well, I believe he has.
You think that bunch of scientists have buried themselves out here in the Pacific Ocean to spend their lives thinking up things beneficial to the world?
Why not? Scientists have been giving their lives to help the world since histories have been recording their doing.
Yes, I know, Pat, but...
And we haven't any reason to think otherwise of G47 and his men.
You've certainly suffered a change of heart since our first landing on Euclidia.
I've learned a lot about the Euclideans.
So have I, and I don't care much about them.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tex. I didn't mean to start an argument with you. It's just that... Oh, I can't express exactly how I feel.
Well, don't let it worry you. We've been under such a strain for the last few weeks that everything is out of proportion. You'll be able to organize your ideas when we get home.
When we get home. Home. Only a little matter of 3,500 miles, and we're hurrying home by standing still, firmly anchored under 1.5 miles of water.
Well, Joan said it was best to remain anchored for a while, because she and Jerry had to have some rest. And navigating a submarine at this depth is something about which she knows a whole lot more than I do.
Oh, very well. I suppose there's nothing more to do.
And I'll call the youngsters to take over in a few minutes, and then we'll get out of their way and let them handle it.
J12C to J24Y. Johnson to Gregory Boat.
Tex, it's Johnson.
Yes, go ahead,
To
Pat.
Bradford. I've not been able to raise you. Answer if you can hear my signal. J12C to J24Y. J12C at Wilmington to Gregory Boat.
Couldn't we answer him, Tex?
Joan said no.
But the Euclideans have our position anyhow.
We don't know if they have it exactly.
J12C to Bradford. Johnson to Gregory Boat. Waiting for instructions from you before proceeding with plan. Can you hear me?
What does that mean, Tex? Waiting for instructions before proceeding with plan?
It sounds as if it meant that he was waiting to hear from me before compounding the formula and organizing our party to return to Euclidia.
Well, he should know better than that. Johnson doesn't need any instructions from you or anyone else to do the things he will have to do.
Exactly. Then his message means something else entirely.
What else could it mean?
That's what I don't know. Unless... Yes, that might be it.
What, Tex?
Those Euclideans. They have agents all over the world. Johnson may have found that they have someone watching him in Los Angeles.
In that case, they might take the formula away from him.
Yes, and in that case, Johnson would be smart enough to keep the formula hidden and do nothing without hearing from us.
But he may be in danger. Those men mean business.
I thought you were ready to believe they had only good intentions.
Why, I think they mean to use their inventions for good, but I'm even more sure that they wouldn't stop at anything to gain your formula. I wish we could warn Johnson of our position.
Well, it can't be done, Pat, so we'll just have to be patient.
Well, if we can receive his radio messages in safety, how could it do any harm to send him one?
They might learn a lot more on the island by intercepting our messages than they would from Johnson's.
I suppose so.
Have you had a message from Johnson?
Tex, it's Joan. They must be awake.
I'll say we're awake. What's going on there?
Well, suppose you and Joan hurry up forward and we'll tell you.
We will join you in the control section at once.
Perhaps Joan will know how to get a message to Johnson.
Perhaps, or she may agree that we'd better take a chance and send it, even if the Euclideans do hear us.
Boy, I sure got a lot more sleep on that steel mattress than I expected to get.
How many times have I told you that everything designed by the Euclideans would perform its appointed tasks perfectly?
And how many times have I told you that I'm not so crazy about everything the Euclideans do?
Now, you two forget your argument for a minute and listen to us.
Certainly, Captain.
Okay, Tex. What do you want?
We've just had a message from Johnson.
Yes, and it might be mighty important that we get an answer to him at once.
Hey, this boat isn't moving, is it?
Obviously not.
Well, Tex thought it better to anchor. We were making only 2 or 3 knots.
You were wise, Captain Bradford. We may ride safely at anchor here for an indefinite period.
Okay, never mind about how safe we are. What about Johnson?
He's apparently in some sort of trouble. Or at least we figured that from the unusual wording of his message.
What did he say?
He said he was making no attempt to complete our plans until he heard from us.
And that is not logical?
Far from it. Johnson knows everything to do exactly as we would do it ourselves. And when he seems uncertain, he's got a good reason for it.
Hey, how about sending him a message, Joan?
That depends entirely on Captain Bradford's view of the matter. If this is serious enough to warrant it, we must send the message.
Well, I think it's serious enough to warrant doing anything we have to do.
Then we will send a message to Johnson.
But Tex, what wavelength did you get his message on?
3 meters. That's the best on our side at home.
J12C to J24Y. If you are getting this, listen carefully, as this may be my last message for some time. Danger threatens original plan.
Danger.
Quiet, Pat.
Radio tampered with. Safety deposit. Formula. Do not come to. Stay away from. John.
Hey, something's wrong.
What happened to the radio?
It was not this radio.
Something happened to Johnson's set. He said danger threatens. Then the set started to cut out. I didn't get the rest of his message.
I thought he started to say stay away from Los Angeles.
Yes, I heard that.
This should be a time for great accuracy. Johnson started to say, do not come to Los Angeles.
Well, that was the idea anyhow. He tried to say something about the formula.
And he mentioned safety deposit. Tex, the formula.
Yes, Pat, it's in a safety deposit box at the bank. But no one will ever get it.
Euclideans will find it comparatively simple to enter any bank in your world and take from it anything they may desire.
Oh, golly. I guess that's right.
Oh, Tex, your formula. They know where it is.
Yeah, I'm afraid they do.
Oh, and they'll get it.
Oh, no, they won't.
They will easily get into your vault at the bank.
Yes, and if they do, they may get their clothes taken off, or worse, for their trouble.
Gee, Tex, how have you got it protected?
Most natural way in the world. I protected the formula with some of the compound.
You've actually placed some of your universal solvent in that vault at the bank?
Right. The bank officials cooperated with me in giving me a small, unused section of an old vault. And the solvent is so located there that any disturbance or opening the vault with anything except the combinations known only to Johnson and myself will bring together the 2 portions of the formula. The universal solvent will be compounded immediately, and flowing over the written formula will destroy it in a fraction of a second.
You are well protected, Captain, and your foresight is admirable.
Oh, you bet. And it was a good idea, too.
Then you're not worried about your formula, Tex.
Not much, but I am worried about what they may have done to Johnson in trying to get the formula from him.
Hey, Tex, let's call him on the radio. You know, even if his set's gone bad, it'll help him just to know we heard him and we're on our way to California.
May we, Joan, dear?
The emergency warrants the risk. I will attempt to raise Johnson. He was on 3 meters.
Correct, Joan?
I am turning all reserve electrical power in the entire boat into this transmitter. You may now reach Johnson with ease, Captain.
I'll try it. J24Y to J12C. J24Y to J12C. Bradford to Johnson. Gregory boat to Wilmington. Hello, Johnson. We got your last message. Do nothing until...
J24Y. J12C to J24Y.
Oh, that isn't Johnson.
Gregory Land Station
Sounds
calling
funny to
Gregory
me.
boat. You will answer if you are hearing me, Bradford.
Hey,
Answer at once.
sounds like one of those Euclideans.
That is one of the most brilliant and most dangerous of all the Euclidean scientists. Thales, the chief electrical authority in the world today.
I am
Thanks,
fully
the
aware
Euclidean
that
at
you
our
are
home
listening,
radio.
Bradford. You will gain nothing by attempting to conceal your position. Your entire course is watched. I will give you 10 seconds to answer me. 10 seconds for the combination of the vault where your formula is kept. Think rapidly, Captain Bradford. You have only 10 seconds.
Tex, will you answer him?
Don't do it, Tex. He's bluffing.
I think we may safely defy him.
We'll risk it, and we won't answer him.
But he said 10 seconds. What can he do to us?
We'll know in a couple of seconds.
You have had your chance. Now you will never see your homes again, nor will you return to Euclidia. You will never leave the floor of the ocean where your submarine now lies. You have failed.
We last saw Jerry Hall, Joan Gregory, Captain Bradford, and Mrs. Gregory anchored in 1.5 miles of water where their stolen Euclidean submarine was apparently quite safe from immediate harm or Euclidean pursuit. Once more, however, the Gregory party has occasion to learn that no one is ever completely safe or free from Euclidia, the magic island. After several vain attempts, they received a message from Johnson, who is in Los Angeles. But Johnson's message was anything but cheerful. Something is threatening the captain's precious formula, and Johnson's message is interrupted by a strange voice.
I am fully aware that you are listening, Captain Bradford. You will gain nothing by attempting to conceal your position. Your entire course is watched. I will give you 10 seconds to answer me. 10 seconds for the combination of the vault where your formula is kept. Think rapidly, Captain Bradford. You have only 10 seconds.
Tex, will you answer him?
Don't do it. He's bluffing.
I think we may safely defy him.
We'll risk it, and we won't answer him.
But he said 10 seconds. What can he do to us?
We'll know in a couple of seconds.
You have had your chance. Now you will never see your homes again, nor will you return to Euclidia. You will never leave the floor of the ocean where your submarine now lies. You have failed.
Hey, the sub's going to fill up with water.
Joan will be drowned.
All of you remain in your stations. We will suffer no damage.
Isn't there something we could be doing, Joan?
Merely remain in your places. I will do everything necessary.
Well, whatever you're going to do it quick. That water looks mighty wet to me.
We are now quite safe. You may rest assured that nothing further will happen to us.
But, Joan, you said that before, and something has certainly just happened to us.
I'll say something's happened, but what was it?
The submarine was shaken by violent shocks, just as it was when those magnetic bombs were released from that Euclidean plane.
Well, no magnetic bomb ever got down to this depth.
You are correct, Captain Bradford. Though the action on this submarine was much the same, we were located by the radio power beam from the island.
The power beam? Why, Joan, you don't mean that those scientists are able to send a burst of destructive power along a radio beam?
They can do everything else.
Then we invited that when we took a chance on answering Johnson's call on the radio.
Precisely.
But if we were not harmed, what is the effect of that beam?
The effect on us is probably negligible, as I was fortunate enough to be able to surround this boat with protection in time to prevent the beam hurting our outer shell to any extent. Though we will find a number of indentations in the metal.
You mean that radio beam thing hit us hard enough to put dents in the side of this submarine?
Precisely.
But, Joan, that would mean that the force of that radio beam was greater than the pressure of this water at a depth of 9,000 feet.
It was considerably greater.
Well, golly whiskers. What kind of protection could you surround the submarine with that would keep that kind of pressure from smashing us?
The protection is made up of the same elements as the destructive power beam. I merely released several of our magnetic bombs on the course to Euclidia. And the explosion you heard was the meeting of the magnetic bombs and the power beam from Euclidia.
But, Joan, that Euclidean we heard threatening us was in Los Angeles. You say you interrupted that destructive beam coming from Euclidia?
I don't understand that either.
It should be quite obvious.
Well, maybe it should be, but it isn't as far as I'm concerned.
Does it not occur to you that an agent of Euclidia would hardly have the opportunity of setting up apparatus for the transmission of such a beam in the same room in which Johnson was working?
The same room?
Yes, Tex. Joan must be right. We heard Johnson's voice. Then he sounded as if he were in trouble. And then this other voice came over our set. It must have been our set.
Undoubtedly.
But where did that radio beam thing come from?
From Euclidia?
Oh, I'm beginning to see it, Joan. Euclidia was listening in on our two-way radio talk and getting our position logged accurately. Then when that Euclidean in Los Angeles finished his little speech, they turned on the beam from the island.
That would be it, Captain Bradford.
And now every scientist on that magic island knows exactly where we are.
And I suppose they will start moving in on us from all directions.
They will attempt to do that, of course. But we will reach Los Angeles in safety.
But we're losing so much time. And Johnson may be in danger.
No doubt about that, but we couldn't get there in time to help him anyway.
That is true. Mr. Johnson will have to care for his own safety until we arrive. In the meantime, we may make ourselves comfortable.
Comfortable? Swell place for it.
Now, Joan, as you think our best move is to do nothing for a while, perhaps you take this time to give us a little explanation about that Euclidean fellow who managed to get so close to Johnson in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Who is he?
I am sure the voice we heard over Johnson's radio was that of Thales, chief electrical scientist on Euclidia.
Another of those weird names derived from some ancient scientist, I suppose.
To be sure. Thales bears his name in honor of the original Thales, philosopher of ancient Greece. Thales lived 2,600 years ago and was the founder of modern electrical research.
I thought Benjamin Franklin and his kite discovered all that.
No, I'm afraid Thales lived slightly before Franklin.
Yes, quite a while. So the Euclidean chief electrician is in our country.
It would seem so, Captain Bradford. Thales is powerful, perhaps the most clever man on Euclidia. Many believe him to be superior to G47.
Well, he sure got these electrical rays of his trained. If they'll run along the ocean floor for 600 miles and bump our submarine around.
You appear to have made something of a study of this man, Thales. The original, I mean. Have the Euclideans any proof as to how far he progressed with his studies 2,600 years ago?
Euclideans have made more extensive research than any other mortal men. Thales was credited with discovering the electron, the Greek word given to common frictional or static electricity, though there is no evidence to show that he even dreamed of the electron as we know it today.
I never even met an electron.
You've met a lot of them, Jerry, but maybe you didn't recognize them.
And I'm as much in the dark as Jerry. Joan knows so many things of which we are ignorant. I can still remember learning in school that Benjamin Franklin discovered electricity.
Your schools must be sadly lacking
Oh,
in
I don't know. We get along all right. I think it's a lot better to know that Edison invented electric light than to worry about some Greek who rubbed the cat's back to knock out a few sparks before America was discovered.
Thales did not rub a cat's back to get sparks. The earliest experiments were performed with pieces of amber and cloth.
Okay, but what?
And Thomas Edison did not invent or discover the electric light.
He did, too.
Joan, are you sure of what you're saying?
Naturally.
Well, now, let's not get into an argument over it. For all practical purposes, Edison improved the electric light and made it really practical after the invention of the dynamo about 1870. But there undoubtedly were attempts made before that.
I never heard of them.
In the year 1800, the principle of the electric light was discovered by Sir Humphrey Davy, who made a successful arc light with batteries and charcoal. And that was 47 years before Thomas Edison was born.
Oh, I give up. You know too blame much for me.
No, don't feel badly about it, Jerry. Joan apparently knows more than any of us. But we can do nicely in our world without quite so much knowledge.
You mean we will do nicely in our world when we get back to it. But in the meantime, we're very much in Joan's world. Let's give her a free hand in working this thing out.
Is that sensible? What would you suggest, Joan?
For the moment, nothing.
Huh. I could have thought of that.
Nothing is easily thought of, but many people do not know how to do it well.
You're certainly right there, Joan. And one of the worst faults we have is impatience.
A great deal of patience will be needed before we are safely in California. Now, if you will all remain perfectly still, I will open the beam testing devices in the radio receiver, one by one, and we may check Euclidean waves without danger.
You mean you will be able to tell if they are still sending out radio impulses from the island?
Precisely. And as it makes it very difficult to observe this with our transmission channel closed, You must all maintain absolute silence while I test the various beams.
I'll keep quiet.
We'll not make a sound until you give us permission, Joan. Go to it.
Very well. Silence.
Hey, my ears! Stop that thing! Stop it!
Jerry, what's the matter with you?
Oh, my ears. My head aches. Gosh, that noise.
I didn't hear anything to make your headache, Jerry. Just one of those carrier waves Joan tuned into.
No, it wasn't. Gee, my head still aches. It's that same note. You remember, Joan?
Yes, Jerry, I remember. But you have forgotten.
What did I forget?
To remain silent. Now our position is definitely established on the island.
Oh, Jerry, they heard you over the radio.
Oh, yeah. I guess they did.
How quickly did you shut off the microphone?
Almost instantly. But Jerry's voice undoubtedly was registered at Euclidia. And probably with Thales on the mainland. Now they will know we have not moved since our last message.
Oh, gee. I'm sure sorry. But I couldn't stand that one sound hammering in my ears.
I don't understand about that, Jerry.
I will explain it in a moment. First, I will refuel and get the submarine in motion. Our progress will be slow, but at least we may change our position a fraction of a minute in latitude. Now I will explain why that seemingly innocent sound should disturb Jerry so badly.
Well, why didn't it bother any of the rest of us?
Oh, that's my keystone note.
Your what, Jerry?
Joan can tell you better than I can.
Jerry and I have neglected to explain one Euclidean experiment we witnessed on our way to this submarine.
You two manage to learn something every time you get lost on that island. All Pat and I saw was a bunch of doors that we couldn't manage.
Well, we got mixed up in them, too. It was when we opened one of them that we heard the old deaf guy practicing music.
A deaf man practicing music?
I will explain it. We accidentally opened the door of the musical laboratory where Octavo was conducting his experiments.
Was that his name, Octavo?
For Octavius, who was credited with arranging the musical scale?
Mother, you knew.
Well, we have learned one or two things, Joan, but go ahead.
Jerry and I stood in the doorway, observing the old man as he tapped on vessels containing varying levels of water, sounding a true note with each. At last, he struck the note to which Jerry's consciousness is tuned. And Jerry had a severe headache.
Yeah, just like I had when that note came out of the radio.
That is being done deliberately?
Well, I'd say so. Same principle as a musical note wrecking a bridge, isn't it, Joan?
Precisely. And while Jerry may be uncomfortable from the effects of his note, I think we have nothing to fear unless they discover the keystone note of this submarine.
Joan, they might find a note which would destroy this boat.
More than that, they are sure to find it. Our only hope is to reach Los Angeles before they succeed.
And if we don't make it in time?
Then a single note of music will end this voyage.